Good evening, everybody. As promised, this evening we are going to continue our study on extraordinary biblical women. Last week we took a look at the Samaritan woman at the well in John chapter 4. Today we're actually going to study two women together, and that is going to be Mary and Martha of Bethany. Also, we know that Lazarus was their brother. So there's several places that we could look at. We know that Mary, Martha, and Lazarus were all very close friends to Jesus, and they followed Jesus. And we know that they were people of considerable means, and therefore they also helped support Jesus' ministry. We have several stories about them that we could look at, and I encourage you to do so. Probably the one that I know the most about is found in John chapter 11, when their brother Lazarus dies and Jesus brings him back from the dead, and we see their interaction with Jesus separately in that chapter. We're not going to go there today. I encourage you to read that, and again, you can find Mary and Martha in a couple of different places. But the place that I want us to really look at today and draw some lessons from is found in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. So you can go ahead and pause there if you want to, and turn in your Bibles to Luke 10, 38 through 42, and that'll be where we have the bulk of our lesson today. Or if you don't want to pause, and you can go ahead and just read along here, or listen along here. Luke 10, 38 through 42, he says, "Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching, but Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up to him and said, 'Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me.' But the Lord answered her, 'Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her.'" So we see an interesting thing here. Jesus goes into his home, and Jesus didn't have a home of his own, but he was never without a place to sleep, because people welcomed him in to his home, to their homes, and were very hospitable. In fact, that's what we see in that culture and in that time, is the hospitality of other people, and this is what they were practicing here. Now, Martha, interesting enough, the name Martha is the equivalent in Aramaic. Aramaic is another language that is in the Bible. One book is written in Aramaic, and that's Daniel. It is the language of the Hebrews during Jesus' time, so Jesus spoke in Aramaic as his first language. He also would have spoken Hebrew and Greek as likely would have spoken Greek. Most everyone spoke Greek at that time as secondary and tertiary languages. But in Aramaic, the word Martha is the equivalent, the female equivalent to Lord, not Lord as in Jesus is Lord, but just master of one's home. So between that and some other things that happen, it does appear that something has happened to Mary, Martha, and Lazarus' parents. They are probably relatively young at this stage in life. How young, we don't know. Certainly not old, because they're not married, so they're relatively young. Most people would get married at a pretty young age back then. But it appears that Martha was probably the one that was over her siblings at this point. And she is doing what she has always known to do, and that is to make sure that everyone has a meal. Now, Mary, on the other hand, according to the cultural mores and norms of that time and culture, would have been expected to be there helping Martha prepare the meal for all of the men that were in the house and the other room. But she did not want to. And it wasn't that she was being rebellious against the culture or the norms and the mores. It was that she wanted to hear what Jesus had to say. She found that to be more important and far more interesting. And so we see Jesus speaking to Martha about those things. And I want us to draw a few lessons from that. One thing that I want us to see is that um, hospitality is an important idea. Hospitality is more than just having people in your home. That's part of it. In our culture, that has become something very difficult to do. Even before 2020 began, wasn't something that had kind of fallen away from our culture, is to have other people in our homes. I think we do need to try to strive. I know my family and I need to try to strive to get that kind of thing back in time. If this COVID thing ever gets taken care of, and Lord willing, will within this coming year. But hospitality is something that we can do all the time. The way we treat one another, even if we can't open up our homes and invite people in for dinner. A lot of the reason that our culture doesn't do that probably has to do with time constraints. We're always so busy all the time, though we're not that busy now, obviously, as busy as we once were in some ways, and busier than we were in other ways. Also, part of it has to do with pride and judgmentalism. We're always feeling like we have to impress other people. Sometimes people feel that way, and feel like just anything out of place will cause other people to talk. So try to keep from being the subject of gossip and rumors that can be painful. We shy away from other people, and we're missing something when we do that. And so we can be but we can be hospitable now, even with COVID. We can still show hospitality by the way we treat one another, by the way we help each other, by the way we speak to one another, encouraging one another, letting people know that they're loved, and that kind of thing never goes out of style. Jesus was welcomed into the home of Martha and Mary and Lazarus, he and his disciples. And certainly the Bible tells us in many places, but we remember in Hebrews it says to be hospitable, for many have entertained angels without even knowing it. That's probably referencing Abraham when he is met by God and the angels before God tells him about Isaac being born the next year, and before Sodom and Gomorrah were to be destroyed. He didn't know who they were until later on. There are other times when Noah and his wife, as an angel announced that Samson was going to be born to them, they prepared a meal for the angel, but they didn't know he was an angel. Even if there was an angel, even if we did have an angel come to us, we wouldn't know it unless he actually wanted to tell us that he was an angel and show it and prove it to us. So he's using that phrase there, be hospitable. You never know who you're going to be entertaining. In Martha's case, she was entertaining the Lord, though she didn't know who he was. She knew who Jesus was, and she would know in a very real way as she continued to grow, and as well as Mary and Lazarus, as they continue to grow in their faith and knowledge and relationship of Jesus. They would know who he was even more, and that would especially be true towards the end of Jesus' earthly ministry, as he brings Lazarus back from the dead. The second thing that we can pull out from that lesson is that we need to be careful comparing ourselves with one another. As we continue to study about Mary and Martha, we find Mary is, again, as we already mentioned, right there in the living room sitting with the men, listening to Jesus, while Martha, rather, is scurrying around doing house chores and getting ready for the meal. She obviously is a woman on a mission. There's nothing wrong with that. And she would not stop until all of her guests were happy and full from their meal. But the one problem we see is that Martha is feeling kind of bitter. There's a lot of people out there that need to be fed, and she's getting everything ready without any help. We know what that's like. And I don't believe that Jesus was when he said what he said to her, he wasn't ridiculing her or anything. He knew how she felt. Like, must hear what she was thinking. How dare Mary do this? My own sister. Um, how doesn't she even know that I'm doing all this on my own? And that's where her discontent begins. Um, she compares her current situation to someone else's, and when we do that, oftentimes we realize that we're holding the short end of the straw. We've been given the raw deal. And so, sometimes we get caught in that trap, don't we? We look at other people, look at that person there, they have a better job than I have, or they have a nicer car, or they have better behaved children. I would just go on and on and on, or their school is better than my school. And we see this so much on social media. Social media has given us the opportunity for lots of good things, better ways to communicate with one another as we have here, especially in the days of COVID. But it also has bred a lot of horrible things, and one of those things is people being completely dishonest, showing themselves to have a perfect life. But always remember, a camera can only display what a camera has been shown, and that's all we can see. Don't compare yourself to other people, especially on Facebook and Twitter, all of those things, because no one's life is perfect. It can't be. We all go through things. We all go through good things. We all go through bad things. The difference that can be made, however, is our perspective. A person can go through something good, but if they have an attitude a personality that needs to be corrected, they may see something good as something bad, or they may be waiting for something bad to happen. On the other hand, another type of person who has a different attitude, has adjusted their attitude and their life to, if something bad happens, they can still see the good in it, and they know that they're going to get through it. And that's where our faith needs to come in, as God says in Romans 8:28 to us, as Paul says in Romans 8:28 by inspiration, all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to His purpose. So we don't want to compare ourselves to other people. We want to strive to be as Paul, and he says, I have learned that in whatever state I am in, to therewith be content. No matter what things look like on the outside, God is always at work in your life. Grass may look greener on the other side, but it seldom ever is. None of us are the same. None of our lives are ever the same. And if you compare yourself to someone else, it doesn't change you or their situation. It just makes you bitter, and it will rob you of your happiness and your joy. Another thing that we can learn here is that Martha, she was struggling, and she knew where to go. She's disgruntled. She feels slighted. Life is unfair right now. And she knows who's able to fix things. So she goes into Jesus and she really says, make my sister come in here and help me. Something to be said for a person who knows where to go first. Sometimes we're tempted to share everything, our problems, with everyone else. Before the days of social media, we would get on the phone and maybe we'd have a circuit of people we'd call and complain to. Now we have social media where we can put all of our grievances out there for the whole world to see. That's not where we should go. We shouldn't even just go straight to your mom and dad, your brother and sister. If you're struggling with something, whatever it is, take it straight to Jesus. He knew what was going on. He knew the heart of the situation. And he could see better than what Martha could see. Because really, you can tell Jesus anything. He doesn't rebuke Martha for her words. He doesn't say anything like, make your sister come and help you. You just listen here. You did not get to speak to me that way. Don't you know who I am? Some people talk that way. I probably am guilty of talking that way to my kids on occasion. about Jesus. We don't see any kind of pride or anything like that in Jesus' words. He sees Martha where she is. This is the great thing about biblical leaders, and especially the Lord. He accepts people where they are. We talked about this last week with the woman at the well in Samaria. Knew where she was, and he accepted her where she was, and he began to pull her where she needed to be. He listens to her. You're not given any indication that he interrupts her. He listens. You have that kind of audience with Jesus as well. He is able to bear your burdens without any trouble. We want to strive not to project our weaknesses onto the Lord. He's not there. He's not weak. He knows our weaknesses, but he himself is not weak. He doesn't become angry or offended when you come to him in the middle of your emotional problems, your upheavals. He wants you to come to him. God is your Father. He loves you unconditionally. He doesn't mind if you tell him exactly what you're feeling. His feelings are not going to get hurt. His ego is not going to get in the way like ours would. Too many times we project our humanity upon the divine. And when we do that, we put ourselves at a disadvantage. And we don't come to know God for who he is. We look at him as if he is us. And though Jesus is God in the flesh, God with us, he overcame sin, never sinned at all. Our ego is a result of sin. We can go to him and speak to him, and he understands where it's coming from. Think about the things that Job had said in the anguish. The Bible doesn't ever candy coat our problems, sugarcoat them. That's us. God knows things are horrible. God knows things are tough. No matter what it is, you having trouble, you take it to God. Take it to Jesus. They listen, and God listens. The Lord listens. Jesus is your friend, as we saw in Hebrews, or see in Hebrews chapter 2. Jesus is our elder brother, and he's not ashamed to call us as that either. He is eager to listen. And we see the path to peace begins with one thing. After Martha says what she needs to say to Jesus, the Lord suggests to her that she is worried. He says, Martha. He uses her name twice. Martha, Martha. This isn't a way of rebuke. He's calling attention to her by using her name. Martha, Martha. You are concerned and worried and troubled about many things. But one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her. Martha is reminded by Jesus, and Jesus also reminds us when he does this what to be concerned with, where to put our focus, and what should take a front row seat in our lives, and that's our relationship with him. It's got to be first. It's among everything. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you're doing. Everything has got to take a back seat to our relationship with Christ. It just has to. He's got to be our top priority. That's what he's reminding Martha of, and that's what he's saying that Mary had been doing. When we concentrate on Jesus first, we will discover some pretty helpful things, powerful things that will encourage us. Number one, we will realize that we are never alone, nor are we without help. This is what he says in Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 5. He will never leave or forsake us. We will know his grace in Christ, when we come to know Him better, and we will understand that His grace is sufficient for all our needs, as He Himself tells Paul in 2 Corinthians 9:8. And we will also come to find strength to face whatever may come our way. As He says in John chapter 14, verse 27, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." When we come to know Christ and we put Him as our priority, we'll learn these things and many more. May we always strive to put Jesus first. And may we always strive to be like Martha and go straight to Him when we need that strength and that comfort. But may we always strive to put Him first. We go to Him not just when we are in an emergency, not just when we are in pain, but we go to Him all the time. That's the example that Jesus wanted Martha to learn from her sister Mary. And that's the example that we need to learn. That's the thing that we need to learn from that example as well. Jesus comes first. Our relationship with Him must come first. Thank you all for listening. Next week, Lord willing, we will take a look at Mary Magdalene, a different type of lesson than what this evening is for sure, and then we'll look at a couple other ladies from the book of Acts. Hope you all have a good and safe week, and we will see you soon. God bless, and bye-bye.